Hi Prerna, hi Shubham. Okay, what happened? Oh yeah, here we go. The girl who loves the trippy background is not here today. And I am going to shut down everything else. We seem to be live, so I'm also going to go live on my Instagram. Give me a moment. I don't know why this doesn't allow people to go. Oh, okay, that light is too much. We should figure it out. Okay. And here we go. All righty, everybody. So good to see you guys. Let me just move back a little bit so y'all can see me clearly. Already praying, man. Thank you so much, Shubham. In case it drops off here, I'm on Coach Butcher Live. I'm just going to put that on Instagram. That will keep on going. So here we are. Unfortunately, I do not know why this happens here on Crater. It's a great platform. Maybe it's just me and my internet connections, etc. So just bear with that, guys. Okay, let's look at what we are talking about today. Again, I know most of you are students. Some of you are just beginning out in your careers. Doesn't matter what we speak about in the session today, like anything else, will help you understand. Thank you so much, Team Creator. It will help you understand how do you make sure you don't make the mistakes that people might currently be doing, or people who've not had the luxury of having someone coach them, having someone train them, etc. So lucky you and lucky the rest of the organization that you walk into, because you will walk in prepared. So good for everybody, all over and all together. Alrighty, so what is today's topic? We are talking about in leadership mastery. What is it that helps us hold tough conversations? So we will take a look at what stops us from having tough conversations, what happens to our brain. It's become a favorite part of all sessions, whether it's emotional intelligence or it is leadership mastery. It's kind of just become one of those things. So let's talk about the brain, what's going on over there. And what's also shown up very nicely is the linkage between the emotional intelligence series and the leadership mastery series. And I'm sure most of you, whether you're looking at this live, whether you're interacting live, on any of our platforms, or you're going to be watching this at some point of time in the future. As we keep advancing in our topics, you will realize emotional intelligence and leadership, if not becoming synonymous with each other, feed off each other very, very powerfully. I'm a great leader if I'm emotionally intelligent, and my own leadership capabilities keep building on my emotional intelligence. The more I advance in leadership, not managerialship. I don't mean you becoming a senior manager. I don't mean you becoming a manager of an organization. I mean you being a senior leader, displaying the traits, the behaviors, the attitudes, the charisma that is required of a senior leader. So not just senior leadership by authority, but senior leadership by action, or leadership by action and by interaction. So not just your own actions, but also the interactions that you have with your key stakeholders around you. So today's session is about holding tough conversations, difficult conversations, not the easiest subject to really, get rid of. Now, you could be telling a client that your project is delayed. You could be sitting through a really, really tough performance review. Yes, Prerna, of course it's true. You could be sitting in a very tough review. You could be having a tough conversation with one of your team members who's not pulling their weight on a team project in your college. It could be any of those situations. You could be having a tough conversation with your younger sibling who may be getting onto a path which is either not desirable by you and your family, or it actually might be a situation where they are actually turning against the family in itself. So maybe you need to have a tough conversation with them. It could be a tough conversation that you have in a personal relationship. It could be any of those things. Are they easy to have these tough conversations? Not always. Think of any tough conversation that you've had. What happens to you before you have a tough conversation? Just think about that. Usually not the easiest. Some of us, yeah, most of the time Conversations are not easy, right? Any of the kind of situations that I spoke about, these are not easy conversations. So, how do you manage the exchange so that it goes off smoothly, as smoothly as is possible? Do remember, we've all had bad experiences. I was trying to look for a better word, but we've all had bad, poor, tough experiences with these kinds of conversations. Maybe your boss lashes out at you. Maybe uh, if you have a client, maybe your client hangs up on you. You're in the middle of a conversation, your client hangs up on you. Your girlfriend or your boyfriend hangs up on you. Maybe you have to tell, you speak to your family members or your in-laws to set boundaries. Nimisha says, I have tough conversations with my mother every day when I'm asking for money, and Shubham says, yes, the same. Yeah, that is a very difficult conversation. I can only imagine that, right? Because they will also want to know why do you need the money, and now you're suddenly like, but I'm old enough to not have to answer that question. I just need money because I need money. Like, could you just give it to me, right? That's also a possibility. Either, whenever these situations happen, usually we have two responses. We either find it very difficult to speak about them and therefore we avoid them. Never mind, let this conversation be. Who's going to go and start speaking to my mother-in-law or my girlfriend or my boyfriend? And who's going to ask them to change their ways of being? Forget it. It's not going to happen. We either do that or we go ahead and directly confront the person. What do you think you are? How do you think you can handle this? What do you think of yourself? Do I not matter? I've been in that situation. I should tell you that. I've been in a situation where I'm like, give me an answer right now. I want to know. Sorry about all the clapping, but I want to know what's really going on over here. Give me an answer right now. This is not okay with me. How could you do this? The question that you want to ask yourself is, where does it come from? What causes me so much worry when it's about having a tough conversation? Nimisha says it is induced by prior frustration. That could be one reason that is feeding into you not being able to have a powerful, tough conversation. And yes, it is possible to have a powerful, tough conversation. You'll be surprised. Anyone else? What do you think might be causing these two kind of responses? Either avoidance, and we, by the way, those of you who've been sitting through all the sessions, you know the answer to this. Come on. Jayan says, yeah, like bottling up. Sure. What causes us to either avoid or to react? Okay, now test time. Are you listening? All right. It is brain chemistry, Shubham. So just explore that a little bit more. Think of the last two sessions that you attended on emotional intelligence and also on the last one that we did on journaling. Aha, the amygdala. Well done, Shubham. Excellent. If I was in a workshop in person, I would have handed out a chocolate to you right now saying absolutely spot on. Remember the fight and flight response, fight, flight, freeze. So if I'm fighting, I'm reacting. If I'm flying, I'm avoiding. And freezing is when I just don't know how to handle it. So I put my head in the sand like an ostrich and I say, if I don't have this tough conversation, it'll go away. Kind of like Gandharva says, oh yes, kind of like avoiding also. There's a psychologist called Hans Schroeder who says worrying takes up cognitive resources. It's kind of like people who struggle with worry are constantly multitasking. They're doing one task and trying to monitor and suppress their worries at the same time. But that's not the right answer. Don't avoid having those tough conversations by adding on too many tasks for yourself, saying, oh God, I'm too busy, I can't have a tough conversation because my goodness, having a tough conversation is tough. Gandharva says it's a pea-sized thing in your brain that somehow controls everything. That's the amygdala for you, my friend. That's the amygdala for you. It is a pea-sized thing in your brain, in your vast brain. It's like this tiny, itsy little speck, which has so much control over you till the time that you don't have control over it. Jean-François Manzoni is a professor in INSEAD and lectures on human resources and organization development, my area. And Jean-François says, that's not the right answer. Tough conversations are not black swans. The key is to learn how to handle them in a way that produces a better outcome, which means less pain for you and less pain for the person you're talking to. Shubham says, even that is you just trying to avoid the conversation. Yeah, that could be it. And putting on work so that you have a valid reason not to have the conversation. Yeah, you're avoiding it or you're flying away from it, right? You're freezing in the moment and saying, I can't have this, and then you avoid it. It is avoidance. So if you're to look at what really happens when either we are starting off a tough conversation or we're going into the middle, there is a conversation that's going on and we're smack bang in the middle of it. Okay, you need to give me a moment, guys. We're facing a little bit of an internet issue. Just give me a moment while I turn it off. Why is this stream reminding me of my mom? Oh my God, Nimisha, definitely not. Hold on. Fix this bit. So we've advanced so much and we've not been able to fix our internet issues. We've got 5G that got launched. I don't know if this is an issue of 5G. Too many satellites causing too much radiation in our lives and yet not being able to give us a seamless experience. Okay, can somebody give me a heads up whether you can hear me or not? It'll be very, very helpful. Thank you. Can you guys hear me clearly, see me clearly, or have I frozen again in motion? Awesome. Thank you so much, Nimisha. So we'll move on. So I was talking about what really happens in the body when we are about to, or we're in the midst of having a tough conversation. But before that, there's buffering, but it's okay. As long as you can hear me, Jan, that's fine. You know what I look like now, so it's all good. Okay, so conversations in themselves, by the way, they change the brain. Remember we spoke about the brain shifting, your gray matter shifting, your prefrontal cortex shifting, etc. when you are governed by emotions, when you're journaling, etc. Meditation, mindfulness, we spoke about all of that. Now, what happens is when you get into conversations, the production of hormones and neurotransmitters that stimulate your body systems and your neural pathways, those get stimulated and changed. So what happens is when you get into conversations of a certain type, you will find that your body's chemistry starts to change. And as the conversation unfolds, the brain triggers a neurochemical combination that makes us feel either happy or takes us down the other path and makes us feel downbeat. So what is happening? I started out in a conversation and the conversation somehow went tough. When the conversation went tough, remember how the whole stuff happens. How does it all reach the amygdala? Your hippocampus comes into play. Your thalamus comes into play. Your amygdala comes into play. So much stuff that goes on happening. Your hormones kick in. Your neurotransmitters, your neural pathways kind of start to all suddenly become active and dancing and jumping around. When that happens, there is a neurochemical combination that happens, and either cortisol gets kicked off or triggered, which is your stress hormone, as we spoke about, or your dopamine, your oxytocin, your serotonin get kicked off, which are your happy chemicals. So this understanding that what's the impact of the conversation I'm having right now on my body, on my brain, on my body's very chemistry, what's the conversation, or what's the combination, and what's the change that is happening, is what is known as conversational intelligence. And in conversational intelligence, we actually get to understand how conversations trigger both physical and emotional changes in the brain and create what is a chain reaction. So conversations actually trigger millions of neurochemical reactions in your brain. And this either pushes, galvanizes, catalyzes our brain to relate, trust, collaborate, solve problems, create new ideas, work with another person, feel happy, or instant brain freeze. Depending on what kind of conversation I'm happening, my brain might flip. So this happens when our brains develop fear, aversion, defensive protective behavioral patterns. All of this starts to happen depending on the kind of conversations we have with people. And as I already spoke about, there is a production of hormones that happens, whether it's dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, other biochemicals that boost a sense of well-being, or it is a cortical reaction or a cortisol reaction, and your adrenaline goes up and it creates problems for you. Shubham says that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's your brain is this wonderful mechanism, if you will, as is your body. The more you start paying attention to what your body is telling you, the more you start paying attention to what is the linkage between your body, your brain cells, your behavior, your behavioral responses, you'll start to become so much more in control of your own self. It's so important to do everything you can to be able to understand all of this. Also, when you're aware of, whether a conversation, and as I spoke about earlier in the emotional intelligence series, when you become aware of your triggers, it's not just your triggers about what you're feeling, it's also about your triggers of how you're communicating, how you're conversing. That also makes a difference. So Shubham says, ma'am, so I got a year back and had to stick around the juniors and had to have some really bad conversations, and my juniors think I'm cranky. I can only imagine. You may have gone in from a state of fear, a state of shame, a state of embarrassment, any of those, and those are not happy emotions to feel. And there's a possibility that the first conversation inside your head, Shubham, and anyone who's been in this situation, the conversation in your head might have been, what are they thinking of me? Are they calling me a fool? Are they calling me dumb? Am I truly not intelligent enough? It might have been, maybe not the exact same words, but it might have been in this vein. Now, when it's, when your thoughts are going in that vein and your amygdala is getting ready to fight, because dare any one of you ask me a question or make me feel that I'm lesser just because I had to stay back a year, I'll see you guys outside. Now, the minute your brain goes into an internal conversation like this, your thought like this, your entire body mechanism, your tone, your posture, your facial expression, your eye contact, everything becomes aggressive for defense. Remember, you could become passive for defense, you could become submissive for defense, and you could become aggressive for defense, defending yourself. Now, when you're already going into that, what is the signal that you're sending the amygdala? It's time to fight. So what will the amygdala do? It will create that kind of a conversation for you. Now, what you're doing is you're already feeling that nervousness, you're already feeling that shame, that guilt, whatever disenabling emotion you're feeling. And that makes you have a conversation, which again pushes up your cortisol, your adrenaline, and makes you start feeling very jittery. And it becomes an aggressive, conflicting situation. And Shubham says, when in reality, I'm very nice and chill. At least that's what my batchmates used to think. Gandharva says it must have been hard, man. And Shubham says, I had good friends living near college, but that was why it was fine. Otherwise, it would have been a nightmare. Absolutely, Shubham. I can only imagine you've got your support structure around you, people who've moved ahead in life. I'm just going to take a moment here to digress from having tough conversations, and I'm going to say this. You missed a year, you got a year back. Anything that you feel negative or disenabling about it is coming from your conditioning and from the need to always pass, always excel. The pressure is too much. You lost a year, is what people say. Oh, the person lost a year. Where did they lose it? You had great experiences, you had great friends. You sat in classes that you liked, you sat in classes that you hated. You learned something there. And just the experience of now sitting with people who are younger than you, who have more, newness of ideas with you, you can choose to take that as a breath of fresh air and say, okay, here's what people younger to me think. Or you could choose that as a sense of shame. Please remember, shame comes from conditioning, deep conditioning, which demands that you work in a certain box. You have to pass. You have to have great marks. You have to be fair to be beautiful. You have to be handsome to be liked. You have to earn a fat pay packet. If you're not wearing brands, you're not cool. Nonsense. Absolute sheer nonsense. Your clothes, your branding doesn't make you. Sure, it leaves an impact. I'm not asking you to become sloppy. Of course, it leaves an impact as to what are you wearing? How are you presenting yourself? I mean, just imagine if I'd come with tousled hair, and if I'd come with, my kajal streaking down my face, and if I was wearing like tattered clothes, would you want to listen to me? Absolutely not. Let's be fair. But Can you actually, and Shubham says I wouldn't change it for the world, but can you actually, be in a situation uh, where you're so impacted by what you're wearing, how you're looking, and what other people think about you that you lose your own sense of self and identity and understanding of who you be? Don't fall into the trap, guys. It's not worth it. I'm assuming I'm at least twice your age, at least bare minimum. Take it from me, it doesn't matter. Been there, done that, written the book, shut the darned cover, and it has not mattered. It has not changed me as a human being. It has not changed the success I've had, the failures I've had. It has just made me a richer, better person. So look at it from that situation. And I'm going to come back to my topic. Thank you very much for giving me the space to say all of that. Let's come back to now, what do you need um, to do in some tough, when you're having hard, tough, difficult conversations, or what are also known as critical conversations. If you want to keep your relationships healthy, intact, when you're having a tough conversations, remember this. And if you want to make a note of it, please do. Gandharva says, ma'am, you have a nice perspective on the world. Thank you, Gandharva. I'm telling you, it's tried and tested. And, I've gone through the pain, the hurt, the tears, the whole I'm not good enough. Oh my God, I'm not pretty enough. I've gone through all of that before I came to this place. I had to go through it. You don't. I didn't have anyone who sat me down and said, stop it. It doesn't matter. I didn't have anyone back then. If I'm that person for you, I'll be very, very glad to make sure that, or to get to know that one of your lives was changed because of this conversation. Now, remember this, every difficult conversation is really 3 conversations in one. The here's what happened conversation, the facts or supposed perceived facts and the reality of the conversation or the situation. Here's how I felt, the feelings conversation. Here's how it impacted me, my ego, the identity conversation. So you got 3. I'm going to just put that down in the chat box. So give me a moment. Allow me just so that. Okay, I can. Here you go. The what happened conversation, the feelings conversation, and the identity conversation. When you know you're going to have a difficult conversation, my invitation is for you to first look at, why is this conversation difficult for me? Walk in with that information. Why do I fear this to be a tough conversation? What might be my triggers for this conversation to become tough? What do I need to do about that before I go into the conversation? So how can I prepare myself for it? Also, now that you've thought for yourself, think about, what is the other person going through about this conversation? What is happening in their reality? What might they be feeling? How are they going to be impacted by this conversation? It's called basic, simple empathy. Remember, we spoke about empathy in emotional intelligence. Empathy is not you walking a mile in my shoes only. Empathy is you walking a mile in my shoes and seeing the world I'm seeing through my eyes. When you look at me and my world from my perspective rather than from the filters and lenses of your own world, that's what true empathy is about. So understand even before you get, yeah, Nimisha, it does make sense. So understand it before you get into the conversation. What am I feeling about it? What might the other person feel about it? What am I fearing about this conversation? What might the other person fear about this conversation? How is this going to impact me? How is this going to impact the other person? Then go and gather all the evidence, all the facts, all the reality, all the information, all the rules that you need. First, have that ready with you. Then ask the other person who you're in that tough conversation with, what do you think happened? How does it look like from your world? What impact has this situation had on you? If you were involved in this situation, what prompted you? What were your intentions when you acted the way you did? When you get all that information, you're able to have so much a calmer conversation. And when you're going in for a difficult conversation, first ask yourself, is this conversation going to be about me? Or is this conversation going to be about the other person? If you're having a tough conversation, are you having it because it impacts you? Are you having it because it impacts the other person? Are you looking for a greater result for yourself? Are you looking at a greater result for the other person? Gandharva says, yes, ma'am, that's very important. Most people don't do that and it leads to cold misunderstandings. Oh, you bet. You bet. And Gandharva and everyone, I want you to know that even if you're so well trained in it, if you're someone like me who's talking to others about it, does that mean that we are perfect in every single conversation? No. It depends on the degree of emotional impact that the conversation has had on you. Absolutely, Nimisha, probably not me. Actually, not. Probably not. Still has an element of doubt in it. I'm telling you very clearly. If you think that people who've already gained mastery in communication, mastery in leadership, and they will never have a problem in a tough conversation, you're wrong. Remember, we get better and better and better and better at having and handling these conversations. Does it mean we will have every conversation as a smooth one? No. And Nimisha says you still have a better state of mind than us 20 years olds, I'm sure, ma'am. Perhaps a little bit, but again, it depends on how emotionally invested I am in the relationship and in the problem that or the situation that allows me or doesn't allow me to have a powerful conversation. What it does do, of course, everyone, is the more you have powerful conversations, the more you operate from what I'm speaking about today, you will find that the incidence of having tough conversations go bad or go south reduces. Most often, like if today, or if when I was a 20-year-old, I had 90% tough conversations go completely bad, with me storming off out of the door and the other person storming off in the other direction, or other people having to come and resolve the conflict for us. Today, maybe I have 5% conversations that go on the deep end, but I still have those 5% conversations go off on the deep end. I'm also continually learning. And so everything that I'm sharing with you is coming from that personal experience also. There's, of course, research, there's studies, there's brain work, which I also study. But I'm also sharing it with you from hardcore experience that these are some of the things that go wrong. And I'll give you an example that has happened very recently. So I was having a conversation, a tough conversation with a really close person where I wanted to get certain answers. And I was not getting those certain answers. And it was making me, as Nimisha had said a little while ago, more and more and more frustrated. And because not receiving a response was triggering off some of my internal conversations, it was triggering off some of my fears and insecurities, which I did not realize existed till this event happened. I went full on ballistic on that individual. Like literally, I was pushing the person and saying, "You better answer this for me now." And I remember I could feel my nostrils flaring. And when my nostrils start to flare, that for me is like peak anger. I don't know if you can see my nostrils flaring right now. Oh God, global broadcast, and I'm flaring my nostrils like this. But I really went ballistic on him. And afterwards, I was like, oh shit, man, I should have had a better conversation with this person. So Prerna says, yes, the more you do, the better chances of you turning things around. Yeah. So after that, I apologized to the person saying, I'm really sorry. This is how I went ballistic because this is what got triggered off in me. And I am continually working on myself to identify my triggers and to identify why I went off on the deep end like that. And I promise you, I did 3 coaching sessions after I've had that conversation with that individual. Jayan says, I don't think I can say something without actually giving details. How did you do that? Well, I just did, Jayant. You just got a demonstration of it. Look, and I'm building the link between what you're asking, Jayant, and what we're talking about. By and large, our conversations go down south because we don't operate from the reality of the situation. We operate from the story inside our head. Did I ask what was the reality for the other person? I didn't. I was just operating from my need to get an answer, which was not coming. Did I ask the person how they're feeling? Of course not. My feelings are paramount, right? So the story in my head is the problem in the conversation. That's why I said the what happened conversation, the feelings conversation, and then the identity conversation. How are you hurting my ego? How am I hurting your ego? If we can put that story aside and just look at truly, here's what happened. And then he said this, and then she came around and said that, and then minus all of this. Shubham says, I think I know. People probably say TMR, too much information every time you say something. And Jayan says, oh, yes. So you have to cut down on all the extra story, all the extra words, and really try and come down to here's what truly happened. Here's how I felt. Here's the impact on me when you have to have a tough conversation. If you're a supervisor having a tough conversation with one of your teammates, okay, here's what you were supposed to do. Here's what you actually did. Here's how it impacted the task and how it impacted the rest of the team, and therefore how it impacted us and our goals. Here's what I'd like for you to do differently the next time. So the idea is to be able to get that. Here's what was supposed to be done. Here's what actually got done or actually happened. This is what needs to happen differently in the future. But we go in and then I had told you to get this done and you had said, and I have a full trail email that shows you that this is where you were supposed to get back to me, and you were supposed to get back to me at 3:33 and 23 seconds, and it is now 25 seconds and you didn't do it. Look. So what is it that you're truly doing? Have I dropped off again? Can you guys hear me? Would you please let me know? Anybody, if you can just message me on chat here. Team Creator, am I audible, visible, or have I dropped again? Is it a mega 5G? As you can see, I'm not very thrilled about 5G coming into our planet. Team Creator, could you please help me here? Am I still audible, visible? Or has the internet done a trick on me again? I seem to be on the right internet. Okay, looks like the link had dropped again. Guys, can you see me, hear me okay? Sorry about that. Suddenly I saw one person and then now there are 10. So obviously you guys are back. Can one person just message me on chat and tell me you're here? As I sing in every session, is there anybody out there? Okay, thanks, Prerna. Yeah, I got it. It's okay. Thank you so much. All right. So the first one is follow the, the 3 conversation process. Ask yourself what happened, feelings, and identity. Identify for yourself. Why am I really having this conversation? And do I really need to raise the issue? A friend of mine puts it very powerfully. He says we usually get into conflicts or into troubled conversations because either we're trying to prove ourselves right or we're trying to educate the other person. Ask yourself, what am I trying to do here? Am I trying to educate the other person, thereby telling them I'm better than you are? Or am I actually trying to prove myself right? No, what you're saying is wrong. What are you doing? What purpose, what goal will get achieved if you have this conversation? So you may want to ask yourself, what do I desire or hope to accomplish by having this conversation? Do I want to prove a point or change the other person? Am I truly interested in creating learning or sharing or problem solving? And if so, how can I shift my own stance? Like, am I going in all guns blazing and ballistic, or am I going in with the purpose of, I really want to build a better relationship with you, whatever that relationship might be. It might be a romantic relationship, it might be a sibling relationship, parental relationship, a school teacher relationship, or lecturer, whatever your educator relation, any relationship that you have. What is your stance? What are you going in for? And therefore, how should you be communicating? Also, how am I contributing to the conversation? Am I adding to the problem by having a conversation like this? Am I reducing the problem by having a conversation like this? What is my contribution to the problem, to the situation? Ask yourself these questions. Looking at the chat for a moment, Gandhava says, proving myself right, that's usually important for everyone when they're in a discussion. Yeah, sure. But you'll also realize, Gandharva, that when you are in a stable relationship, secure relationship, a relationship which doesn't make you feel threatened, a relationship which doesn't make you feel small, and a relationship which doesn't trigger off your worst internal conversations like I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, intelligent enough, etc. When you're in a relationship like that, then you don't necessarily need to prove yourself right. You will find yourself having expansive conversations and dialogue. You will talk about ideas that can help solve somebody else's problem. You will talk about ideas that can create ease in other people's lives, including your own. It's when you're in a relationship where you need to prove yourself, where you feel attacked to some degree or the other, that's when you have the need to prove yourself right and prove yourself important. Shubham says, yes, yes, first thing can be to have a resolution oriented mindset before having these conversations. Well, Shubham, you're right in that the risk attached is, are you looking at the resolution to be what you desire it to be, or are you looking at coming for a resolution which creates the greater good for the greater number? This is a principle, triple GN, and I'll come back to what Nimisha said and Gandharva said. It's called triple GN, which is greater good for the greater number. It comes to me from my teacher, and I love the concept so much that for the last 12 years I've been attempting to, aiming to do this as much as I can. It's also a Zen concept. Uh, how do anything and everything that I do, can that create greater for more people? So bear that in mind. Am I going into this conversation to try and modulate, navigate, manipulate this conversation to the result that I desire? So am I creating a win-lose relationship here? Or am I actually walking into the relationship, into the conversation, sorry, to find a solution that creates greater good for the greater number? And that greater good for the greater number could be you, the other individual, and only one more person apart from the two of you. But even if it's anyone outside of you, greater good for the greater number. Gandharva said, like the relationship we had with our parents, and Nimisha said, who said parental relationships make you feel secure? And then she followed it up with, okay, I'm just kidding. Maybe it does. But there is some truth in that. A lot of parental relationships, so parent-child relationships, are not the easiest, to say the least. A lot of them aren't. Blessed are the children who've never ever had any issue at all. Actually, you know what? Maybe not even that. Not even. Okay, blessed are the children who've had very healthy relationships with their parents, where they've had a fight and then they've gone ahead and they've discussed the fight from a space of, I love you, but this is not working from me. Majority of us go through life, and we are conditioned to do it. We go through our lives either resenting our parents for what they did, till we come to an age where we realize, oh shit, my parents were right. And by that time, a lot of damage has been done. I know a lot of people who I coach. I'm really sorry to say, uh, I'm really sorry to say, there are a lot of people who've had very tough relationships with their parents, to the point of them not desiring to see their parents again ever in their lives. And I've coached quite a few of them. So, and I'm continuing to coach some of them. So, Shubham, that pause was just me taking it in, just me absorbing the energy of what Nimisha said. And Nimisha, behind every thing that we say, there's usually a reason. So look at your reason for why you kind of had that conversation. Maybe you've seen people who've had relationships where, the child did not feel very secure with their parent. And it's okay. It's okay that they didn't, as long as they can work on it and learn to forgive their parents and learn to forgive themselves for resenting their parents. Both are important. Jayant asked, did I convince anyone to talk to their parents, ma'am? Yes. Yes. And it's not about convincing, Jayant. I want to tell you that when we do coaching, we don't do any kind of convincing at all. We just sit down with the individual and we explore what is it that's so disenabling for them and what is it that they desire to do. And a lot of times people don't desire to have these difficult conversations with their parents, with their siblings, with their grandparents, with people who they thought they could trust, and now suddenly they're finding they can't. These are very difficult conversations to have. And a lot of times, especially where the parents have come No, Jayant, it's definitely not like therapy, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But especially where the parents have come from an old school of thought where I'm your parent, I'm your father, I'm your mother, you better listen to me, I know what's right for you, you better do exactly what I'm telling you to do. Especially when the parents operate from that mindset, and if they have a rigid bone in their bodies about no, you can't tell me. I know how I'm living my life. Are you now, ma'am, are you now going to tell me how to raise my child? There it becomes very difficult. In fact, children grow with lots of problems, and I don't want to get into that. It'll take me 3 hours to just talk about it. Um, but suffice to say that coaching helps definitely. It's not therapy, Giant, at all. There's a huge difference between therapy and coaching. Not the right forum for me to talk about it right now. I'll invite you to read up on it. See what is the difference between coaching and therapy, and you'll be able to get a clearer picture. But bringing it back, because you need to have a powerful conversation, and the powerful conversation that you need to have is with somebody who you trust, you expected from, and that expectation or that trust was broken and unfulfilled. It becomes even more important to know your purpose. Why do I desire to have this conversation with the individual? Am I trying to prove them wrong? Am I trying to prove myself right? Am I trying to prove themselves as the perpetrator and myself as the victim? What am I hoping to get out of this conversation? It's really, really, really important. Another way that you can have powerful conversations and deal with tough conversations is talk about it from a third person's point of view. Put your own emotional, energy or emotional charge around the situation. Put that aside and look at it as if a third person would. And if you're finding it difficult to look at it as a third person would, find someone who you can trust, who will be able to give you that third person perspective. Remember this, most of our conversation is the stories inside our head. Those are the ones that make or break a conversation, and those are the ones that create a conversation is tough or not tough. And then go into exploring what is their story also. It's not just your story. Listen to them, really listen to them carefully. What are they saying? Are they feeling a certain something? Go back into the three conversations. What happened according to them? What's the story according to their perspective? How are they feeling from their perspective? What is the story in their mind? Explore that. Try to unravel how both of you, or how three of you, or five of you, how all of you got there. Share your own viewpoint. Share your past experiences. Share your intentions. Share your feelings. Share. And remember this, you may be operating from a lot of assumptions. You're assuming a lot of things about the other person or where the other person is coming from. Remember that. And question those assumptions. Question them for yourself. Question them with the other person, saying, hey, I'm assuming this. Might this be true? And then move into problem solving. But before you move into problem solving, look at how you can shift your mindset. Am I walking into the conversation thinking this is going to be a difficult conversation? This person will start fighting with me. This person is not going to respond only. This person is again going to go into their stories. There's going to be no information. This is going to be a crazy meeting all over again. Gandharva says, ma'am, my boss talks about things the same way you are. Okay, I promise you, your boss and I have not spoken yet. Gandharva, you can tell your boss about my sessions and he or she can listen in. Okay, so coming back, change your mindset. Try framing your mind, when you're going into a conversation, try framing it into slightly something more positive. Don't go into, oh God, once again, I have to go into this conversation. I don't like this man. Why do I have to talk to this person again and again? Don't walk into a conversation with that mindset. You will end up making it an unnecessarily difficult conversation, because suddenly when you go in with that mindset, remember this, we've spoken about it. Your mindset, your thoughts will impact your facial expressions. It will impact your body. It will impact your eye contact. It will impact the tone of your voice. All of that will get impacted, and a conversation that could have been easy is going to go into the other direction altogether. Now imagine you're in the midst of the conversation and the person is saying things, throwing them at you fast and furious. You're operating from the story inside your head. Your body is giving you signals that you're getting riled up, that what this individual is saying is not making sense to you, and because you're operating from the filter of this was going already, this is going to be a difficult conversation, you're going now suddenly you don't even realize it, but I'm coming to that, Prerna. Your breathing is becoming more shallow. Relax, breathe, but not like this. If you do this, you're sending across the signal to the person that you're getting aggressive, you're getting irritated. When I say breathe, become calm, become centered. You remember I was talking about it in the mindfulness session? Bring your energies together. Don't let your energies be all over the place. Breathe and come down into your center, come into your heart, and then express yourself through your breath. Have a calm breath. Do that. The more calm and centered you are, the better you are at handling difficult conversations. Take regular breaks throughout the day to practice mindful breathing. Refocus. Absorb every kind of crap that is coming your way. And when you practice this on a daily basis, minute by minute, then when you're in a difficult conversation, it will come to you naturally, rather than you going, that's not deep breathing. That's shallow breathing like a bull. Yeah, Nimisha, that will make them think you're not interested. The other thing that you could do is, of course, one, like I said, acknowledge, the other person's perspective, their story. Remember, that's where they're coming from, and be compassionate towards them. Do remember, if you operate from your fears and insecurities, so do they. And you don't know what's happening, what's their backstory. You don't know what's happening in their life. It's one of my favorite things that I quote to people, also comes from my teacher. As you can see, a lot of stuff I've learned from my teacher. Once I remember we'd gone to our teacher and we'd said, you know what, there are people who are coming and they're coming with Louis Vuitton bags and they're coming with, wearing expensive watches and expensive belts, and they don't even put in 10 rupees into the donation box. What kind of behavior is this? People from the slums are coming and they're putting in money in the projects. And characteristic of him, he listened to us patiently, he let us rant, and then he said, and how do you know what's inside those bags? Do you know that they're empty sometimes? It had never struck us because all we were doing was looking at the outside. It's a Louis Vuitton bag. And it was original. You can make out when it's an original, when it's not, it's a fake. It was an MS belt. It was Gucci shoes. But all we were seeing was those brands. We were not seeing what was really happening behind the scenes. You don't know what the backstory of the person is. You don't know why they behaved a certain way. Get to the feelings conversation. Get to the what happened conversation. Girish says, I think when people act not interested, I don't want to talk to them then. Sure. You could ask them, looks like you may not desire to have this conversation now. However, it is a crucial conversation. I'd really like to have it. How about we reschedule this today? Unless or until, of course, you're a supervisor and you have to have the conversation with someone who's up for a performance review, or somebody who's done a compliance error, or somebody who's created a big blunder. You have to have those difficult conversations right then and there. Nimisha says, yeah, why would you? They're making you feel bad for talking to them. Why wouldn't you? They're making you feel bad for them. Huh? Okay. Yeah, why wouldn't you talk to them then? Sure. Shubham says, yes, I've heard rich people are equally miserable. If money could buy us happiness, all the rich people in the world would actually be sharing that money with others and not striving to keep more and more for themselves. Whoever does. I'm not saying all rich people do that. Okay, good. So related to this is a very, very important thing, which is about listening. Are you listening to the words they're saying, or are you listening to the words they're not saying via the emotions they're expressing? So if somebody turns around and says, you know what, I think you're right in everything that you're saying. It was definitely my fault. I apologize. I shouldn't have said like this. I shouldn't have done that. Can we please end this? Did you hear the tone? The person is tired. The person doesn't want to talk about it. The person is saying that I've given up. What are you listening to? Are you just listening to the words? Because if you're just listening to the words, you'll say, yeah, I won, man. This is exactly what I wanted. You may have won this little fight, but you would have lost the battle of a relationship with that person. And you would have lost the battle of understanding others, of empathy, of compassion. You would have lost all that. Whenever you're having a difficult conversation, whenever, you know what I find useful? I ask them, is there something I can do for you? Is there something I can shift in myself that will make life easier for you? What can I change? Not what can I change? Not that. What can I change that will make your life easier? Just that little bit of compassion. It's difficult because it means squashing your ego. It's difficult. I tell you, it's difficult. It is doable though. It is doable. You just need to have the muscle for it. You just need to make sure that you're putting in the effort, because you have to ask yourself, in the long run, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? Slightly spiritual there, but really serves the purpose. Brenda says you would also see that they will probably never trust you with anything close to them if you have that winning mindset. Oh yeah, absolutely. So how concerned are you about winning? If you're only concerned about being at the top all the time, remember, the top is a lonely place. Uneasy lies the head that wears the crown and walks alone. Hi Jitendra, I'm glad you joined in. Only we're just about to finish the session. Sorry about that. You can watch the replay on Twitter. You can watch it on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those places. One of the last few things that I'd like to say to you today about handling tough conversations is that whenever you've had a tough conversation, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown, Shubham, yes. Whenever you've had a tough conversation, spend some time to reflect on it afterwards. Ask yourself, what went well? What didn't? How have I... Shubham, Julius Caesar said that first, many, many centuries, aeons ago. It's not from Game of Thrones. Okay, just bringing it back. Sit down and reflect. What is it that I could have done differently? What did I do well today? How can I replicate this in any other conversation? What about myself did I learn? How did I react? How can I not react like this today? That's a lot of courage. Be courageous. Have a difficult conversation and then learn for yourself from it. Gandharva says, but for us millennials, George R.R. Martin said that, man, sure. Hats off to all you millennials. I just want you to know that Julius Caesar said it. I was not in that era, but I read about it when I was a child. Okay. Just one other thing that I want to say. When you're having a difficult conversation, and I'm sorry I didn't say this before, but when you're having a difficult conversation, get out of the blame frame. Stop blaming. You did this, you said that, I did this, I didn't do this, you said that, you should have done this. It's not worth the while. And then reflect back on that. What does the blame game help you with? What does it help you escape? What does it give you or what does it offer you? It's a very powerful thing to do. Very, very powerful thing to do. And that brings us to the end of this. Is there a question I can answer for you guys? Shubham says, I kind of expected such quotes to have come from him. Caesar, that is. Yes, I realized that, Shubham. See, that's how powerful body... that's how powerful body language is, Shubham, and everyone. People can perceive how you're feeling, how you're reacting. So don't go and do... and... in a difficult conversation. You are not a bull, you are a human being. Breathe like a human being. Alrighty then. If there's no other questions, if there's no other questions, I'd like to call it a day. If you have a question, I'm very happy to answer it. So I'll take a moment. In the meanwhile, I also realized, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, that all these weeks I have been giving you a half Facebook handle. My Facebook handle is actually Coach Shalu Butcher. Nimisha, thank you so much. She says, I really liked your stream, ma'am. I'm so glad to hear that. Team creator, yay, well done. Thank you very much for ensuring we have the right topics and pulling the right kind of people in. I hope you guys are all following me. I think that's a thing here. You can follow me. So thank you very much. Coach Shalu Butcher's Facebook and Instagram is, of course, oh, I was going to say Insta. So Insta and Twitter are Coach Butcher. So I'm working with one of you millennials on my social media, and he kind of scolded me yesterday, saying, "Man, you have the wrong hashtags, you have the wrong profile." So apparently, everything I'm doing on social media is incorrect. So guys, if I gave you the wrong Facebook ID, please pardon me, and that's fine. And of course, LinkedIn, I'm there as Shalu Butcher. So if you've missed a part of the session today, you can catch us anywhere. You can also catch us here on the stream itself on Creator. All you need to do is go and find me, Shalu Butcher. My name is written over there. Do that. Oh, Shubham says it's okay, ma'am. It's kind of like me getting patted on my back by Shubham right now, saying, "Oh, it's all right. You're okay." Alrighty then. Thank you so much, guys. Have a super evening ahead. I look forward to seeing you guys next week on Thursday and then on Saturday. Have a super weekend. Oh, and happy holidays for everyone who's celebrating the festivals also, the Shara, Ashtami, Navmi, all the good stuff. Thank you very much, Gandharva. Bye bye. Take good care. You're so welcome. I hope you find it useful when you're applying it in real life. Good luck with having difficult conversations. Ta-da!